What's up, gamer? My name's Waluko, and today I'm going to show you how to make Vestigial Unique items in Path of Exile 1. If you don't know what a Vestigial Unique item is, it's a new type of unique that was added in Update 3.29 with the Curse of the Allflame League that's basically inherited a modifier of some kind from a different unique item of the same type. So gloves can only inherit modifiers from other gloves, helmets from helmets, and so on. Here's an example of a Vestigial Unique that I made. This time we got a pair of Wanderlust boots to inherit the additional curse limit modifier from the Windscream Unique boots. The only way to make Vestigial Uniques is to interact with the Legion mechanic in the endgame. For those that don't know it by name, Legion is the mechanic where you find the giant purple crystal in your maps. You click on it, it summons two armies frozen mid-battle. You hit the soldiers to wake them up, then when time resumes for them, you kill everyone in both armies and take all their stuff. There's a total of 5 different factions that can spawn in Legion encounters, and Vestigial Uniques can only exist in 5 different slots of your gear. You can get Vestigial helmets, body armors, gloves, boots, and shields, but none of the Uniques in other sockets can be converted into Vestigial Uniques. To make a Vestigial Unique, you need a crafting material called an Enshrouded crystal, which only drops from the generals that have a chance of spawning at the back of each army when you start a Legion encounter. The general from each faction drops a different Enshrouded crystal that works on a different type of gear. Hyri, the Karui general, drops the Enshrouded crystal for gloves. Viper, the Val general, drops the Enshrouded crystal for helmets. Lioneye, the Imperial general, drops the Enshrouded crystal for boots. Sanctus Vox, the Templar general, drops the Enshrouded crystal for shields. And Akuna, the Mariketh general, drops the Enshrouded crystal for body armors. So first, you need to get the Enshrouded crystal that works on items of the slot that you're looking for. After that, you need to get your hands on the unique item in that slot that you want to steal a modifier from. So for example, if I wanted to make a Vestigial Unique helmet of some kind that inherits a bunch of melee crit multiplier, I would want to start with a Val Enshrouded crystal, which works on helmets, and the Abyssus Unique helmet because that has a boatload of melee crit multiplier on it. Once you have them both, use the Enshrouded crystal on the unique item that you've chosen, and it'll turn into an Enshrouded item. The tooltip on the Enshrouded item says that it can be transformed within the domain of Timeless Conflict. The domain of Timeless Conflict is kinda like a super Legion encounter that takes place in its own zone. When you clear Legion encounters in your regular maps, the monsters in boxes will drop various amounts of splinters from each faction that they're part of. When you collect 100 splinters from the same faction, that stack of splinters will turn into an emblem belonging to the same faction. To enter the domain of Timeless Conflict, you need at least 2 emblems from 2 different Legion factions. But if you want, you can also use as many as 5 emblems from 5 different factions. The domain of Timeless Conflict encounter itself is kinda like an all-you-can-beat monster buffet with a set time limit. When you use an emblem belonging to a certain faction to open the instance, that faction's general and its monsters will be allowed to spawn when you start the encounter, and each different emblem you use will also add 1 extra minute to the encounter's timer. The timer starts at 15 seconds, so with the minimum of 2 emblems, you'll have a total of 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and if you use all 5 emblems, you'll have a total of 5 minutes and 15 seconds instead. So after you get your Enshrouded item, and you get all of the emblems that you want to use for the Domain of Timeless Conflict, open your Atlas screen, click on the Domain of Timeless Conflict button in the bottom section of the Atlas, make sure all of your emblems made it into the sockets, then open the instance. Once the portal's open, go inside, then make absolutely certain that you do not stand in this bright glowing circle in the middle of the zone. Standing in that circle will start the encounter, and we have one more step to complete before we get to that. On the top, left, right, and bottom sides of the zone, you should see little purple icons on your minimap that each mark the location of one of these crystals of permutation. Click on the crystal, and a small window will open up that can hold an item. Place your Enshrouded item into the window, then press the confirm button, and when you do so, your Enshrouded item will be locked into the crystal of permutation. If you mouse over the crystal with the item inside, you should be able to see a progress bar, a label that says 0 out of X amount of variants tested, and then one more label beneath that which says 0 out of 3 variant rarity. The amount of variants tested is simply a fancy way to show a kill counter. For every enemy you kill in the Domain of Timeless Conflict, that number will go up. Every time you reach the maximum amount of variants tested, your item will gain 1 variant rarity and the bar will reset. Each Enshrouded item can have a maximum of 3 variant rarity, so you can fill up each item's bar a maximum of 3 times before it's completely charged. Each stack of variant rarity on an Enshrouded item increases your chances of getting a more rare outcome when you reveal the Vestigial Unique that's being made from the Enshrouded item. There are 4 crystals of permutation in the Domain of Timeless Conflict, so you can charge up to 4 Enshrouded items at the same time if you want to. All kills will count for all items at the same time, so you'll not be slowing yourself down by putting more items in the crystals. Once you've placed as many Enshrouded items into the crystals as you want, Now is the time to step into the big shiny glowing circle in the middle of the zone. Everything will start glowing and charging up, then all the monsters will spawn along the outer walls of the arena. Each faction will occupy a different section of the zone, and the generals will be somewhere among their soldiers, marked with a giant green target on your minimap. Killing generals and rare monsters will stack up extra rewards for you that'll all drop at once in the center of the arena after the encounter's timer expires. Run around the outside of the arena, kill as many things as you can, then when you run out of things to kill, run back to the glowing circle in the center, everything will start glowing like it did at the start, and all of the dead monsters will respawn after a couple seconds. The generals have a cooldown on how often they can spawn, so they may not respawn every single time, but keep going around killing and resetting and they'll pop back up eventually. When the timer finally expires, all the loot you earned will pop out in the middle of the zone, and you should be able to check your progress on the crystals of permutation. To convert an Enshrouded item into a Vestigial item, you only need a minimum of 1 variant rarity. So as long as you filled up the bar at least 1 time, you're free to take the item and run. That said, having more variant rarity is almost always going to be better than having less variant rarity. So if at all possible, you want to let that stack up as high as you can. If you finish the Timeless Conflict encounter and you didn't max out the variant rarity, or you didn't manage to fill up the bar for your item's first variant rarity, that's no problem. All you have to do is run the Domain of Timeless Conflict again. You can go do other maps, bosses, or different encounters for as long as you want, and whenever you reopen the Timeless Conflict, your Enshrouded items will still be in the Crystals of Permutation for whenever you're ready to go again. When you've killed enough to max out your item's variant rarity, or you're just ready to claim it after earning at least the first one, click on the Crystal of Permutations and your Vestigial Unique will drop out. That's the full process of making a Vestigial Unique, but there are 2 more things you should know about them before you move on. First of all, if you enshroud a unique item that has a very large modifier like Abyssus, which has anywhere from 100 to 125% melee crit multiplier, the value of the inherited modifier may be quite a bit smaller than the original modifier's value. In the case of Abyssus, when it passes down the crit multiplier, the inherited value is limited to 50% instead of the 100 to 125% on the original item. I'm not a big fan of this restriction because I think it would be cooler if you could just pass down the full values, but some items could get really broken through this system, so I can kind of understand why they did things this way. Second of all, the only items that can roll as Vestigial Uniques are unique items in the game's core drop pool, which is to say you cannot get Vestigial versions of unique items that only drop from pinnacle bosses or other specific encounters like Dawnbreaker from the Searing Exarch or Tombfist from the Abyssal Liches or anything like that. That said, you can still enshroud unique items that come from those specific encounters, so if you wanted to pass down a modifier from Dawnbreaker onto a different unique shield that does come from the game's core drop pool, like Emperor's Vigilance for example, that'll work just fine, you just wouldn't be able to do it the other way around. And that's everything you need to know about Vestigial Uniques and how to make them. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or in my chat while I'm live both here and on Twitch, weekdays at 1 PM Eastern Daylight Time. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more like it. Lastly, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.